the economy seems to have booked the predictions the first 2 quarters of this year. Why is that? Why are pharmaceutical exports up?
There's a debate in Ireland about data centres and the amount of energy that we use.
While people take pictures of their phone and scroll on TikTok.
Go back to another word that you use. I think, Jacobs are, very humble too, and a lot of their team are very humble, and similarly a lot of the, the project partners that we had are similar.
Tell me about this, stainless steel versus single use. Explain that to me in blonde language. Brendan, you need very little introduction. I'd say you're quite well known in our industry.
I don't think so.
You're very humble, well known and humble. But for the people who are listening, we'll get your name. And what do you do all day? What's your job title?
Okay, well look, thank you for inviting me today. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Brendan McGrath. I'm the Vice President and VP of Manufacturing for WuXi Biologics in Dundalk. I'm also the Managing Director of the Irish legal entity. I guess, what do I do all day? Well, that's
2 jobs.
What do I do all day? I mean, I can do anything from filling out a spreadsheet to welcoming clients to site to hosting the HPRA. So it's quite a varied type job. You talk about general managers, and when you move through an organisation, the higher you get, the more general you become. So you do a lot of different things in a day, but generally, what we do day to day is we manufacture products for our clients, and those products are used by patients. So it's very empowering to know that what we do every day makes a difference to people's lives.
That's nice. You have a sense of purpose then. So it sounds like you work quite hard. Like you're, you say you're general. I like that. That's back to that humility piece. You're filling out spreadsheets. You're meeting people. So you're not kind of in an ivory tower, being a VP cut off from the front line.
Definitely not. One of the way I work, I like to meet people. I like to work with people. I don't feel I put a distance between the team that work on site, and I like to be in the middle of everything that goes on. There are times when I do need that bit of distance, preparing for a client visit or putting together an RFP.
Head down time.
Exactly, but I think I try to do that outside of the core hours, because I like to be seen to be available and to be able to be there for the team.
You do that in your own time?
Usually early mornings. I'm an early starter, so I generally be in the office about 6:30 to 6:45, and I use that time before everybody else comes in to do some of the activities I need to do.
Okay, so it is a manufacturing facility, and yet your job sounds like it's people all day.
Well, I think that's what head of organisations do. Our biggest asset is our people, and we have top of the range equipment, state of the art equipment, but you need trained and motivated people to operate that equipment. So my job is facilitating and doing everything I can to allow people to do the best work that they can do, and that's what a leader really should do. I think what I've learned over the years is that I can't know and have the answer to everything, and what I need to do is surround myself with people who can do that, and my job then is to empower them to do what they do really, really well.
Okay, so this is going to be a question that everybody asks. How do you empower people? How do you give them a sense of purpose? How do you make them feel accountable and responsible and have ownership over their little corner of the universe?
So it's a great question, and there's no silver bullet. It's about the things that you do every day, every week, every month, and it can be the small things to the larger decision points. So you do need to not try and control, and try to coach and mentor people to come to decisions and ownership. You need to. Okay,
that is huge. That one there is huge, I think, for leaders, because we have a tendency when we're managing teams, and I'm only managing a team of 10 or 11 people, but I have a tendency to not let them fail.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to control, and I know this as a flaw of mine. That I'll jump in and if the balls are being dropped, I'll jump in and catch them because I care too much about the clients.
And
so how do you let go?
So that does happen, and I have to make a decision from time to time. When do I get involved? When do I not get involved? And then you have to make a decision about how do you get involved. You know, do I stop somebody in the corridor and ask them about a particular issue, but not understand or realise the impact that, you know, the site head is asking somebody who's maybe 3 or 4 levels below them in the organisation, the impact that has. And what I say to my team, my senior leadership team, is remember what it was like when you were a graduate and one of the senior people stopped you and asked you a question. You know, you didn't realise, or you don't realise the power and influence that you have and how people perceive you. So you need to be very humble and appreciate that. So, you know, you try to balance it. You know, I get it wrong sometimes. You know, sometimes I will swoop in and try and micromanage. Then there's other times when I can, you know, poke and prod and we move things along, and you sit back, and when you achieve what's there, you recognise the team for getting there, and you know you've been a little bit of a part of their journey to get there to do that task.
Okay.
So yeah, I think.
So the first one, I'm going to write the playbook here now by Brendan McGrath, the playbook of empowering people. So the first step is empower. And give them a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
So we want them to feel that they have, I hate the word KPI because it's such a cliche, but that it is part of it. They will be kind of their performance can be benchmarked, and it will improve. I always say, like, the more yourself you're allowed to be,
yes,
the better you will be at it.
Yeah. So empowerment starts from allowing, you know, people managers to host their own team meetings, to allowing them to hire their own staff, to recognise their own staff. And that recognition can be a thank you, it can be an email, it can be an escalation to me to do something, you know, more significant. It can be, you know, job well done, you know, getting the team together and celebrating something that's happened. It can be, you know, putting together an email and a photograph of something that's happened to share with the rest of the organisation. So it's how do you allow people to do those small things as well as some of the bigger things, and that's really what you want to do. And I think you always have to look at, you know, when you're doing your job, you know, and what it's like for your boss or your boss's boss to interact with you. How does that make you feel? And, you know, empowerment is how you make, you know, people remember how they were made felt. And that's the important
Same
thing.
in marketing.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
if you can make your team feel good and appreciate and know that if they need help, they can reach out and get it, but that, you know, you want them to try and do as much on their own as possible.
Okay, that's brilliant. People remember how you made them feel. They won't remember what you said or what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And that's a cliche for a reason.
Yeah.
Make them feel good, and that empowers them.
Exactly. And very often it's the fact that you've taken time out to acknowledge someone, recognise somebody, or recognise the team, and, you know, that's really, really powerful.
Tell me a little bit about the facility in Dundalk. I remember during COVID, we shot videos. There was 1,800 people on the site.
That's right, yeah.
And there were, I don't know how many contractors, hundreds of contractors.
Well, we had 1,800 construction staff on site every day for about 22 months.
Yeah. And we were on that site every day for a good few weeks as well. And it was a fabulously well run and well planned operation. You know, I suppose Jacobs Engineering were there, they were central to the success of it and the delivery of it. And of course we should give them a shout out now. They were, you know, visionary enough to get us on board to make videos. Yeah. So tell me about that facility now. Tell me about the size of it and how it's such a landmark piece of infrastructure in Ireland, specifically, particularly up there in Dundalk.
Yeah.
You know, tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I think maybe I'll go back a little bit earlier and maybe started my journey with WuXi, because I joined WuXi about 7 years ago. So it was January of 2018, and I was the first employee in Ireland and Europe. And one of the tasks that I had was to, you know, look at how we would build this facility in Dundalk. We had chosen Dundalk, and as part of that decision, because of you know, the advanced factory site was there as a result of the IDA investment, and there was also a decision that, you know, there was a push and an encouragement from the IDA to locate outside of Dublin, because there's a lot of pressure along the M50, a lot of pharma plants, infrastructure is under pressure, and trying to regionalise some of the jobs in the FDI that come in. So we chose the site. Then we had to get about the task of actually designing the facility. So we had a small team with a couple of engineers from China helped us with that decision and that process. And then we had to go to market and look for professional advice. So we went to tender on the conceptual design. We chose a partner, IPS, to help us with that. And then after that, then we went to tender on the construction management of the project. And that all happened, in 2018. We broke ground in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to want to know.
Yeah.
How did you pick a team, right?
Yeah.
How did you pick your team to design, plan, coordinate that project?
Yeah. So the first thing I had to do was choose my own team. So I looked for and sought support from my network, and we put together a client team. So project management team on the client side, which was the WuXi side, and that helped us then get the ball rolling. Then we went to market on the concept design. So we had a number of companies who bid for that contract, and then once we had the concept design finished and approved, we then bid the construction management, and again we went to market. And what we did was we looked for a partner that was going to support us based on their previous experience. So what projects had they delivered either in Ireland or in Europe, and what was the key factors in other parts of their experience.
I know, but this is the rational part of your brain. This is the rational part of your brain going, we have to see the track record, we have to see the org chart, blah, blah, blah. All buying decisions are emotional at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
What were you really looking for?
I was looking for a connection, and I was looking for that connection that...
Because you prioritise people.
Absolutely.
As we discussed earlier.
Yeah. So I was looking for a team that we could work with.
Yeah.
I wanted a team, and for me, trust is a big factor in that. Could we work with a team that, are brave enough to tell us when we're wrong?
So brave
enough
trust.
to tell us when...
These are the words I love.
Yeah. So, are they going to work for the best outcome? Are they going to work for, putting something into Dundalk that's going to stand the test of time? And, we want, and I wanted somebody who was, aligned to my principles and my DNA, I suppose. And, we're going to be in the trenches working on this project. The facility, you asked about the size of it. It's 47,000 square meters. It's huge. It's the largest, or was the largest single-use facility in the world at the time. So we were breaking a lot of records, and that encouraged, and making that vision clear for those potential partners got them motivated around what they wanted to do. So, it was for our partners that worked on the projects, this was a milestone project for them also.
Yes.
So there was a win-win for both companies here.
Because I remember I said to you, because this is my bread and butter.
Yeah.
Winning jobs for service providers, professional service providers, and contractors in our industry. So this is what I want to know. So you aligned with your principles, bravery, trust. And I remember when we were prepping, you used the word excitement. Yes. You said, when I went to the post-tender interviews,
yes,
I was, you probably didn't realize it at the time consciously. You probably weren't going, oh, I'm going to pick the ones that are most excited.
Yeah.
But what Jacobs did was they demonstrated to you that they were excited about this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And these are emotional words.
Absolutely, and you could see it in their team. Their team wanted to be part of this project. Their team wanted to be involved. Their team wanted to do something that was a milestone project, in that, traditional pharma, biotech is all stainless steel. This was single use. This was single use at a scale that Ireland hasn't seen before and hasn't seen before.
Tell me about this, stainless steel versus single use. Explain that to me in blonde language.
So we use single-use bags in our bioreactors. So basically, when you use a stainless steel vessel, You have to ensure that once you use it, that you clean it correctly. You have to clean in place, sterilize in place. But you also have to prove that that happens. So you just take samples from the steel. So the issue then is that your stainless steel vessels have to wait while those results are being processed and tested, and you get the results. That can be about 7 days. So the advantage that single use offers is that you can use a single use bag in a bioreactor. Once you have your batch made, you take out the bag. You've had no product contact on the stainless steel, so you can put another bag in. So you can
take a bin liner.
A very expensive bin liner. But what it means then is that your turnaround time and your utilization of your plant increases because you can make more batches. So when you're looking at an investment like we've made and you're looking for a return on an investment, and my job is to maximize the utilization of the plant so that we can make as many batches as possible. Aside from the fact that we want to make medicines for people, we also have to make a profit. So being able to maximize the number of batches that we make in a given year, supports both the need from a patient point of view and a client perspective, but also then the ability to return the investment that the company made in Ireland.
Okay, so that's very smart. So I took you off on a tangent. Let's go back. So we hired the design team.
Yes.
And then what did we do?
So we took a basis of design from our colleagues in China, and we looked at how would we put that into play in Ireland. And that was really exciting because you're involved right down into every single room that's in the facility, every square meter you have to decide. And I remember at the time, making decisions around, say, a floor finish, but not knowing that I'm not going to see the floor finish for, probably 18 months. So you're making very expensive decisions based on a sample, based on, a small example of what you have, not knowing what it'll look like, and then hoping and trusting that that decision was the right decision. And that's the same for everything, from colours of the walls to where equipment is going to be, the size of rooms, the flow. And we did a lot of modelling in the design process to look at how do people move within the facility?
I love this.
How do materials move within the facility? How do we move material from our warehouse into our manufacturing area? Where do we store it? And
so lean.
Exactly.
Lean processes.
So looking at, a lot of, I suppose, go back to the excitement question. The excitement of designing something based on all the previous experiences that you have gives you the opportunity to implement and do things that are very difficult to do in a brownfield, because your building is your building. Whereas we were able to design and take a lot of the things that we had previous experience in and implement them in the facility. And that meant then that you could minimize the touch time on material. You're not moving material unnecessarily. You're trying to create that flow so that product, and in our facility, product moves from west to east. So it gains value as it moves from west to east. We then looked at how do people move. Where a small example, where are our change rooms? How far are they away from the canteen? Do our manufacturing team have to walk a long distance to go and get their lunch? So looking at how we can minimize those distances, and typically a lot of pharma plants, you've had extension after extension, so that means the distance to walk is a lot longer. So simple things like that. And there's a lot more, but they're just a couple of examples.
No, that makes total sense. It's like when you go into an old hospital,
yeah.
And the wayfinding is challenging. People are wandering around. You don't know what floor you're on.
Yeah.
Because they're old buildings from the 1800s.
Yes.
That I'm thinking of Holles Street in particular.
Yeah, exactly. And they didn't move the types of things that we move now. And for us, it's some of the equipment that we have. It's quite heavy, and how do you move it? Where do you put it when you're not using it? Is it easy for people to move? How do you move it? It's a very interesting process, and certainly there were lots and lots of challenges in relation to some of the decisions that we made. And we made a couple of decisions that maybe we could have done better, but that's always the case. Yeah.
And was there a part of it sold, or
no? So
how did that was in the media.
Yeah, so when we came to Dundalk, it was WuXi Biologics, was the anchor site, or the first construction project. And based on the success that we had, we also have a WuXi vaccines entity, and that WuXi vaccines entity was looking for a location outside of China, similar to what we have done with WuXi Biologics, and they chose Dundalk based on the success that we had to date. So we designed and built a facility in Dundalk. It's dedicated, or was dedicated, to one product and one client. And in that process, the successful completion of the project, the client wanted to take control of the building themselves. In the contract that we had, that was one of the conditions of the contract. So we were very happy to do that. And yes, it's a different part of the campus in Dundalk. It's not connected to our site. It's a different type of product. It's for a virus as opposed to a monoclonal antibody, so there has to be segregation. So completely different building, completely different staff, we, as you saw in the media, we successfully sold that in Q1 of this year.
When Jacobs, and again, all the contractors out there are going to be wanting to know this, when Jacobs set out to bring in contractors to build this,
yes,
what were they looking for?
I think, obviously Jacobs bring a huge number of years experience, and a huge experience in designing, building and constructing and qualifying facilities like ours.
All over the world.
All over the world. And, they have a certain number of contractors that they use, but there's also opportunities to use new contractors that they haven't used. So, an example would be, one of the equipment suppliers that we have in our facility. Jacobs hadn't worked with them that much, so we had to bring them on board as said the WuXi request as part of the project. So you build on that experience, but the important thing is, and I think this is where Jacobs is very successful, they have the client at the center of what they do. So I was involved in all of those decisions in relation to who who we brought on board, and got to meet the principals of the companies through the RFP process. And you mentioned when you visited site, I mean, I would have sat in on a lot of those construction meetings and have done regular walks and met the teams and monitor progress on the project. So I would have known, and still do know, because a lot of those people in those companies I'm still friendly with.
I think your favourite word is people.
Yeah, well, it probably is. Yeah.
Like, is your background engineering?
I'm an engineer, yeah.
Yeah. So, because I work with a lot of engineers, construction companies, and it always surprises me when I start working with them. Like, how come you've no pictures of your people? How come you've no video of your people?
Yeah.
You want these huge companies to give you a multi-million euro purchase order.
Yes.
And they haven't got to see who's actually going to deliver this for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Who's the lad that's going to be in the boots on the site?
Yeah.
Delivering it.
Yeah. Well, I think you do meet some of the leads, and you do get to interact with them. But I think, the industry has changed a lot, and
even since 2020.
Even since 2020, and us as a client are very much central to that. And go back to another word that you use. I think Jacobs are very humble too, and a lot of their team are very humble. And similarly, a lot of the the project partners that we had are similar. And we just had a job to do, and we want to get the job done. And
humility. Okay, there's another emotion word. I like that.
But it's also a job that you're working on a site outside of the public view, so it's all about how you execute as opposed to how you look, to put it a certain way.
Yes.
And you can see through the work that you've done, and maybe some of the things that we've been doing on LinkedIn, or companies are doing on LinkedIn, there is a lot more recognition of the teams, and companies recognizing those teams in a public fashion, and I think that's important. But we have to respect that sometimes people don't want that either.
Yeah.
So it's going back to being appropriate with what you do.
But also, I think it's back to that purpose and empowerment that you were talking about, because when you do put people in the I suppose, on the LinkedIn or on the website or whatever it is, it gives them a sense of like, oh, I'm actually very salient to this
absolutely, yeah.
piece, and it makes them feel.
But they're also very proud, you know.
Proud.
So they're very proud to be associated with a project like that, and they're very proud to, you know, to be doing some of the work that you see recognised on LinkedIn, and that can be, you know, we recently won an Operational Excellence Award, and we put a post on LinkedIn. The team that delivered that were so proud to be pictured and associated with that on LinkedIn, you know, from a recognition point of view.
Everyone
so again,
loves an award.
Exactly, and everyone loves, you know, the fact that you're being recognised for that work and that discipline that you have, and you know, it's a nice thing to be able to do that, and it's nice to be able to put our teams forward for awards.
Yeah. So how many people do you have now working on this?
So we just have over 800 people on site full time, and then, you know, we have a number of partners then that are supporting us. You know, security, canteen services, cleaning services. So overall, there's over 1,000 people on site. Okay,
so we know there's an administration in the White House, a reality TV administration, and you know, we know there's certain challenges accompanying that, and a lack of certainty. The lack of certainty is the recurring theme, I think, and obviously pharma and the tariffs. What impact has that had on you? I mean, you know, the economy seems to be producing very good figures for the first 2 quarters. You know, it's going gangbusters.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
So it's interesting, and I think, you know, I'd be very wealthy if I could anticipate what was going to happen and what direction was going to be given from the US. You know, I go back to, you know, how do we manage, and it's how do you manage day to day. So you have to focus on controlling the controllables. We can't control what's going to come from the West. So what we have to do is continue on our path to be a high performing organisation, and you know, that allows us and enables us to face any challenge that we may have in the future. If we sit back and do nothing, you know, we will position ourselves in a place that maybe is not going to be optimal. So, you know, what I have to try to do is, you know, and I do hope that, you know, this comes through with the team, is, you know, focus on what are we doing every day, every week, every month, and make sure that we're focused on being the best that we can be. And we will deal with any headwind that comes. But we'll be better placed to do it if we continue with our continuous improvement program. We continue with, you know, being excellent at what we do and cultivating a high performing team. So we need to be best placed to deal with that headwind. And, you know, I need to ensure that the team feel that, you know, that is our focus, and try not to have the distractions or that are happening influence what we're doing.
You know, I love this, because I sometimes do this if I'm going to a competition with my horse. I will draw a circle and I will put all the controllables. I'll write it down. I'll put all the controllables in there, you know, and all the things I can control are in the circle, and I make sure I'm all over them. You know, and then outside of my control, you know, the subjective opinion of the judge. Maybe the judge doesn't like bay horses or something like that. Put them all outside the circle. And it does give you a real steadying sense.
It does.
And it gives you a real hyper focus. Well, all these things are within. I can't control the weather. You know,
exactly.
But all these things are within, and it's really good for mindset.
It is, and then you're better placed to deal with and react to a change. And if I look at, you know, there's an acronym that I believe very much in, is VUCA. You know, that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity that we deal with now, and you know, that's something that we face every day. And let's face it, we see it in our non-work lives as much as we see it in our work lives. You know, and very often we're very able to deal with it in our personal lives. We just have to look at, well, how can we build that resilience and that, you know, that muscle to deal with it in our work lives as well. So focus on, you know, what are the small things that we have to keep doing, keep following that strategy of, you know, being the best that we can, and you know, a lot of other things then will fall into place as a result.
Keep lifting weights and you'll be more steady in the saddle.
Exactly. Exactly.
If something goes wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, don't be worrying that you can't, you know, that you know, you won't be able to do the Tour de France next year, worry about your cycle today or your cycle tomorrow, and just keep doing that. I do, yeah.
Yeah, that's I love, because I think cycling is it's kind of like, it's very mental, isn't it?
It's very mental, and it's you're on your own, but you can be in a team as well. So I cycle with friends, and we have a bit of a social element too as well. We'll stop off and have a coffee. Do you
ever come up here, up Stocking Lane?
No, not yet. But
I'd say Stocking Lane is a good one. Now.
I would say so. Yeah. so it's it's good. I mean, the great thing about cycling, you can't really hold a phone when you're cycling.
No.
So
it's almost meditative.
It is, and this always on that the world expects. It's important to get time out, and what I love is having a joke and a laugh with the friends, and that for me is one of the greatest medicines, and it's a great way of taking away from what might be happening on your phone.
So the economy seems to have booked the predictions, the first 2 quarters of this year. Why is that? Why are pharmaceutical exports up?
So it comes down to the fact that the uncertainty around the tariffs, and what a lot of companies, and this isn't just pharma, and they've looked at, well, what's your open order book for the US? Can we ship as much as possible to the US before the tariffs kick in? And again, that has created the spike that we see currently in the Q1 and more than likely the Q2 results. We do know the decision in relation to tariffs will be revisited again in July, so we'll just see what happens. But I think that's what companies have reacted to, and I think that's a good reaction. I think it's good for Ireland Inc. What we have to make sure though is that we understand that we realise that there's going to be a gap maybe in Q3 or Q4 or maybe Q1 of 26, because maybe there will be a slowdown as a result of some of the tariffs.
Is it a thing that we could do with a bit of a slowdown in the economy generally, not necessarily in pharma, but in the economy generally?
I think everybody realises that the price of what we pay, whether it be your coffee that you get and you stop off on your cycle, or whether it's your house, there's constant upward pressure, and that is creating a society where we have a lot of people who are missing out on the ability to pay for some of those things. And I think the government has a job to do in looking at how do we start to manage costs, control costs.
Having said that, the Sheen baskets are full.
Absolutely.
And the restaurants you can't get a booking.
Absolutely, and but I guess there's a whole part of our society that don't get to do that.
Yeah, fair.
And €20 in Sheen goes a long way compared to €20 in one of your high-end shops.
Brand Thomas.
Yeah. So
I don't think you get anything.
No. So I think the government needs to focus on controlling upward spiraling costs, but then also how do we reduce costs? I mean, as a business, I'm constantly challenged with how do I reduce my daily, weekly, monthly costs? What improvement plans are we putting in to reduce that cost? And that's the same for whether you're in pharma, whether you're in other industries on the island of Ireland, or even go back to your restaurants and your service providers. How do we offset some of the costs, an increase in costs? Because we can't pass it all on to the client or the customer, but we also then have to make sure that we get value for money for the businesses, because businesses are under huge pressure at the moment.
So if you were sitting having a coffee with Peter Burke, what would you ask him for?
So it's interesting because Peter Burke is from Mullingar, where I'm from originally. So
do you know him?
I do know him. Yeah. So I think I'd encourage him to, work with business to see what.
You'd encourage him. I like that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't ask him for something. You'd encourage him.
Yeah. I think we have to look at how do we address some of the spiraling costs. How do we, cultivate, a value for money strategy that helps businesses to maybe reduce costs, but also maybe to get more for what they're currently paying. So for example, if I take insurance is very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to reduce that cost of insurance on businesses? If I look at, some of the services that we have, some of the materials that we buy, how can we reduce the cost of those to help with businesses? Because what we want to do is we want to encourage businesses to to be productive.
Yeah.
And I think what you also see is that, and there's been a lot of focus on the US, Ireland supplies products to the rest of the world, not just the US. So, we are competitive in other markets.
There are other markets.
There are other markets, and we have to look at how can we grow those markets. But to do that, some of those economies may not be on a par with the US. So value for money is very key to being able to be successful in those markets. So how do we, optimize and reduce costs to make our products competitive in those markets?
Right, so we've spoken about the Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Employment.
Yeah.
Then, of course, there's energy.
Yes.
And you're talking about reducing your costs.
Yes.
So energy is obviously going to be a huge one.
Energy is huge, and there's a debate in Ireland about data centres and the amount of energy that you use. Yeah,
while people take pictures of their phone and scroll on TikTok.
Exactly.
Constantly.
Exactly. So, energy is a huge input to our business. So we need energy, and energy is expensive. And one of the things that we've done is we've successfully received planning permission for a wind turbine, and that wind turbine will generate electricity on our site, for our site. So the benefit is twofold. And the first benefit is obviously, as a company, we benefit from cheaper electricity. We're generating our own. But the other benefit is for the wider community, because we are now off that network. Yes. So it allows for energy to be used by other users, which we know, for example, there's a housing crisis at the moment. So that will eventually free up more energy for more houses. So that, there's a win-win here, and then also as a company, we face a lot of ESG requirements, and being able to replace carbon generated electricity for wind or green energy, renewable energy, is a huge win-win. And a lot of our client companies will look for what impact are we having on the environment, because when you look at your scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3, your supply chain fits into your scope 3. So if we're able to demonstrate that we have minimized our carbon footprint through our energy generation, well then that has an impact on the client who ultimately uses our products.
So maybe the second question you'd have then for Peter would be, what is the plan to upgrade the grid? I mean, I know, on a windy day you're going to have produce more than you need. That goes back into the grid, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then do you have battery storage?
No, we haven't invested in, so this is only a planning at the moment. So,
but you got the planning?
We got the planning.
Yeah.
So, at the moment there's limitations in what you can give back. You can give back energy as a domestic energy generator. But, if I take our business, we're 24/7, 365 days of the year. So we need energy all the time. So we actually have had to build in redundancy in our energy system, in that if there is an interruption to supply, we have generators that kick in within 5 seconds. And that is because of the nature of the products that we manufacture. And if there's any disruption to the heat, the pH, and the agitation, that has a huge impact on our product. So we have had to put in place backup generators to support that. So I think energy is critical. I think on the eastern seaboard, it certainly does, we're very well resourced from an energy perspective, but I think, if the government is continuously looking at regionalisation, I think, the west of Ireland needs additional resource from an energy perspective. And as a population, we're going to have to become more accepting to, wind turbines, solar farms and things like that, because, that is what is needed. And, we have to accept that, maybe the landscape might look a little bit differently because we've had to put in a wind turbine or a solar farm, but, they are critical to do.
But I think the Wind Energy Ireland and all those bodies, they probably need to do a little bit better marketing. They need to overcome these cultural perceptions and barriers that people have. they're very good at putting a message out for B2B, for those of us who are in business, but I think it needs to be on bus stops.
Absolutely.
It needs to be on TikTok.
And the technology has changed a lot. You know, so a turbine today is very different to a turbine that was
15 years ago.
Yeah. So, you know, there are a lot of, and there's some myths about some of the turbines as well. So again, I think there's an education required there.
Education and marketing.
Yeah.
It's everything comes back to marketing at the end of the day, isn't it? If you want to educate the general public about something, we're going to have to invest in media.
Yes.
You know, to get it in front of them. Are you allowed to tell me the effect that the turbine is going to have on your profit and loss account?
What it's going to do is it's going to give us a direct positive impact to our P&L.
I love that. Oh, that's really good.